Hey guys, B1 Studios here with a rather interesting tutorial for you today. So I'm sure there's probably a lot of tutorials out there on YouTube or wherever about how to make your videos look better. But I'll bet you that there are probably not that many tutorials on how to make your video purposely look worse. So this was actually something that I had to do for Indian TV once, and it was basically taking a regular video that we shot for the show and making it almost vintage, kind of like a Charlie Chaplin kind of thing, if you can imagine. So sort of adding grain and making it black and white, and also posturizing time and just a couple other effects to make it seem a little bit more old time and vintage. So in this tutorial we're going to be trying to use Premiere, After Effects, and Audition to sort of replicate this effect. Alright, so this tutorial is going to come in two parts. So the first part is going to deal with the video aspect of it, which is basically all the visual effects that you're going to apply to your video, whether it's HD or it's just shot on whatever camera. It doesn't matter what kind of footage that you took, but we're going to take it and degrade it so that it looks kind of older. And the second part is basically the audio part, because obviously back in, the early 1900s, they didn't have, surround sound audio or whatever. And we're going to try and downgrade the audio part of the video as well. By the end of this tutorial, you should be able to get a video that looks like this. To look a little bit more like this. Alright, that's pretty cool, so without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so you'll notice here that I have two clips that were shot on one of our Canon camcorders, and it's in full HD and it looks pretty nice, but for the purposes of our little skit that we were doing for the show, we wanted it to look kind of like a Charlie Chaplin kind of film. So let me just play it through for you a little bit. Alright, so basically it's putting money in a jar, and so we're actually going to take all this footage and make it a little bit more vintage. So the first thing you want to do is, if you have multiple clips, you want to select all of them by just clicking and dragging on the video portion and selecting all of the video clips that you have. Then what you want to do is right click and hit nest. And what nesting is it's basically just combining all the clips into one sort of block. As you can see, it's now green, and you can take your nested sequence and manipulate all of the clips inside the nest at once. So this is going to make things a little bit easier for us, so that we don't have to repeat the process every single time that we have a different clip. Another interesting little effect that we can apply within Premiere actually is speeding up the clip, and this is going to help us when we're basically going into After Effects and decreasing the frame rate, which I'm going to get to later. But if you want to get a little bit more of a choppy picture, you might want to try this. So if I just right click on our new nest here and select speed/duration, I'm going to get a little window that asks me to adjust the speed and duration. I'm just going to type 200 to speed it up so that it's twice as fast. and now you'll notice that the nest has decreased in length dramatically. This is good if you don't have any time that you're shooting for and you just want to make it look more vintage. You might try this, but if you're shooting for, say, a longer video, or you have to keep it at the same length or whatever, you might just want to keep it at the same speed that it's at. So that was just to show you, so I'm gonna change it back to the way that it was before. Alright, so next we're going to take advantage of the linking function of Premiere to After Effects. So you're going to right click and click Replace with After Effects Composition. And so that's going to take all the videos that are inside our nest and put them inside of After Effects. And this is where we're going to apply all our effects, such as grain, black and white, and whatnot. So once it's done loading, you might want to save it somewhere where you're going to remember where it is. So I'm just going to put it in my documents and name it Add Grain and other stuff. I don't know. Hit save, and now you'll notice we have our video inside of After Effects. So this is pretty cool. Now we can do whatever we want to it, and the cool thing is, now that we've linked it to After Effects, if we add effects to our video, it will show up in Premiere when we go back to it. So it's pretty cool how we can link things and work with both programs at once. Okay, so the first effect we're going to apply is called Add Grain. So go to your effects and presets and type Add Grain. And it should be right there. Drag it over, and you'll notice there's a white box. That's because it's set to go to preview, but you want to go up to the first drop down and select Final Output. And that will apply the grain to the entire image. Now if we just play around with the settings a little bit, we can increase the intensity of the grain to get more grain or less grain in our picture. We can also increase the size of the grain to get that kind of effect. And another thing you can actually do is go up to the presets and select a bunch of different LUTs, which are basically lookup tables, and they'll apply the effect of whatever camera that you select. So those are some pretty interesting functions. For now, I'm not going to really apply any LUTs, and if you want to play around with them, you can, and just know that the function is there, but we are going to move on to our color correction. Alright, so in order to turn this video black and white, there are so many different ways that you can do it. So I'm just going to discuss a couple ways. So one is obviously typing black and white, which is pretty obvious, but under color correction, it's black and white. Once you drag it on there, it's pretty simple. Once you've applied it, it's already black and white. You can alter the amounts of reds, yellows, greens, cyans, blues, and magentas to get different effects. And another thing you can do is add a tint, which if you select it, it's automatically selected to a tan kind of color if you wanted a sepia kind of effect. Now, that's not the effect that I usually use. Another thing you can actually do is, if you type in equalizer, that's also a color correction, you'll get a very interesting effect that's similar to a vignette, but it's not quite the same. If I change that to brightness under the drop down, that'll get me a black and white, but with sort of a expressive color kind of thing going on. That's to be used in certain cases, but you'll know if it's appropriate for your video or not. So all of the functionalities that I'm showing you right now are actually under the color correction folder in the effects and presets tab in After Effects. So if I drop that down, you'll see there's just so many different color correction options that you can choose from. And the one in particular that I use when I'm doing black and white is actually something called Channel Mixer. So if we just look for that inside the color correction folder, it's right there, and if we just drag it over, that should give us the channel mixer. And there's a lot of different options with this effect, but real quick, if you go all the way down, you'll notice there is a checkbox for monochrome, and that will give you a very nice black and white effect while still retaining the most of the midtones between the blackest blacks and the whitest whites. So it'll give you a little bit more realistic black and white, just in my opinion. Alright, so the next effect we're going to apply is actually something called posterize time. And so if we type in effects and presets, posterize time, you'll notice that it's right there under the time folder. And if we just drag it over, we'll get the option to actually adjust the frame rate of the video. Alright, so to understand how this effect works, you have to know how frame rates work. So basically, every video that you take is going to have a certain number of frames played per second. So the frames per second that we work with is usually 23.976, which is about 24 frames per second. Basically, what that means is for every 1 second of video, there's 24 different pictures that are being played. So basically what posterize time allows you to do is actually drop some of those frames, so you will get a lower quality video. So basically that's all we're going to do. We're going to lower the frame rate to about 18. So we're going to have maybe 18 frames per second. The lower the number that you type here, the more frames are going to be dropped, so the more your video is going to look choppy. Alright, so that's all the effects that we're going to apply to the video. So if we just press 0 on the number pad, we can get a nice RAM preview real quick of what we've just created. Just to give you a better sense of the frame rate thing, I'm just gonna scroll to a different part of the video and render that out for you to just take a look. Alright, so once we're satisfied with how our video looks, we are just going to go ahead and save our project, which is under File, Save. If I can just get there. Alright, so we've saved our project, and we're just going to close After Effects, and we're going to go back to Premiere. So now you'll notice that our video is a nice salmon color. That's an indicator that you've linked something to After Effects. So unfortunately, since it's in After Effects, once you press spacebar in Premiere, it's not going to play in real time. So if I just go ahead and play through it, you'll notice the screen's not moving because it needs time to render each frame, and so you can't play back in real time when you're working with stuff that's linked to an After Effects composition. Alright, now that we've got our video down, we are just going to go ahead and start with the audio portion. So there's a lot of things that come into play when we're editing the audio, but first we gotta put it in Adobe Audition. So select it, right click on the audio clip and select Edit Clip in Adobe Audition. Alright, so now Audition is going to load up, and here's our main window, and you'll notice that we have the waveform of our audio right here in Audition. Unfortunately, I have no way of showing you or having you hear what I'm hearing on my computer right now, but this method does work, so if you try it on your own clips, you'll find that it does a wonderful job of degrading audio. Alright, so there's a couple of ways that we can take this audio and make it vintage, but the first thing I like to do is go into the effects rack, and you'll notice under the presets there's actually an AM radio preset. So if we just select that, immediately we start to get sort of a radio-ish kind of sound out of our audio track here. So that's already looking good. But another thing we can do is apply another effect, push the little power head right there to turn it green to apply another effect, and we're going to go to the arrow and go down to filter and EQ and apply a parametric equalizer. Looks kind of complicated, but it's super easy. Just go to the drop down right there and select old time radio. Immediately it'll automatically conform your equalizer so that you get a sort of radio effect. And if I just play it back, you'll notice it's already sounding very nice, or very degraded, however you want to look at it. Now this is important. You want to actually apply these effects before you move on to the next step. So just go down to the lower left corner of the effects rack section right there and hit apply. So this might take a while depending on how long your audio clip is, but once it's done applying all your effects, you'll notice that all of the effects in the effects rack have disappeared and your audio waveform should look a little bit different. Alright, so to make this even more realistic, we can actually add static noise in the background. I'm not talking about that kind of TV static that's playing when you get to a channel and there's nothing on the channel and it goes kind of shh, that kind of sound. But I'm talking about like if you have an LP or record player where you have kind of a very crackly noise in the background. That's kind of what I'm trying to get at. So there is one very nice crackly noise that you can get for free, and it's royalty free, so you can use it anywhere. And it's from soundbible.com, and the file name is actually called Record Player Static. And if you go to soundbible.com, you'll find it pretty easily if you just want to copy paste that link. I'll leave it down in the description. And once you have that, you're going to want to put it into Adobe Audition. So just drag it into your Files section of Adobe Audition. And now we're going to want to create a new multi-track session. So just go up to the very top left corner and click the multi-track button. So we're going to need to save a separate session for this multi-track. I'm actually going to select where I want to save it first, just to make sure I know where I'm saving it, because that's always a very important thing. Saving it in my documents, and I'm going to just name it, I don't know, grainy sound, and hit OK. Alright, so if you've worked in Audacity, you'll notice that this is very similar to Audacity's layout, or GarageBand, or any other multi-track sort of music editor kind of thing. Alright, so now we're going to take our music track and drag it into track 1. Don't worry, this is actually the edited version of our music that we have just created. That's the nice thing about Adobe Audition. When you make edits to your music and it shows up in the Files section of Adobe Audition, when you drag it into a multi-track editor, it'll actually retain all of the effects that you've just applied. And it's going to give me a warning about sample rates and how they don't match, but we're just gonna hit OK. And since we are trying to degrade our sound and not improve the quality, that's not something we have to worry about. So once it's in, we're going to take our static crackly sound and add it onto track 2. If I just select it and Command C or Control C on Windows to copy, and then Command V or Control V to paste, I'm going to be able to copy and paste all these static sounds pretty quickly. And you'll notice that just like in Premiere, Adobe Audition has the snapping tool. So you are sure to get a nice snap when you put all of your audio clips together. And this is going to ensure that there are no holes in your static noise. And that's pretty much all you have to do with the static sound portion of this tutorial. Alright, so once you've finished that, you're going to want to export this entire thing as an audio file. So go to File, Export, Multi-Track Mixdown, and then select Entire Session. So now it's going to basically take all the tracks that we have here right now and mix them down into a single audio file that we can then take and put back into Premiere. Alright, so just name the file whatever you want. I might just change that a little bit there. And again, you want to make sure you know where you're saving it. And I know I'm saving it to Documents. And if you want, there's actually a checkbox that says Open Files After Export. Just unselect that if you don't want it to open after you've exported it. Alright, so we're good with the audio. Now it's time to put everything together in Adobe Premiere Pro. So, we're back in Premiere, and since we have our new audio, we're just going to find it and drag it into the project window. And just take that and put it onto a separate audio channel. Or if you want, you can just delete the first audio channel, the one with like no edits or anything, and replace it with the one that we have just created. You can actually get some pretty cool effects if you layer the unedited one on top of the edited one, and then adjust the volume level of the unedited one so that it's a little bit lower, and you'll get sort of a old and new kind of sound. If you go for that kind of thing, you can try it and see if you like it, but for me personally, I like just using the edited one that we've just created, which is going to give us a really nice vintage old time sound. Basically, that's all there is to it. So just an overview of what we've done in this tutorial. We've done a lot of stuff actually. We've linked our videos to After Effects in a nest, and we've applied grain, black and white, and posterized time, so basically decrease the frame rate. And on the audio side, we've added a radio kind of effect to make it more grainy sound, and we've also added a sort of crackling noise to the background of our audio to make it sound just a little bit more vintage and realistic. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial.